New Zealand needs tax reform. A two-piece tax reform. A capital gains tax and a tax-free threshold. This would decrease the tax burden on ordinary people and increase the tax burden on the wealthy. This would make life easier for ordinary people at no cost to the well-being of the wealthy. This policy would deliver tax cuts to the working people who need them the most. A tax-free threshold on the first 10,000 earned would help ordinary people massively. It would decrease wealth inequality and cut down on poverty. It would encourage work by allowing people to keep more of what they earn. This is a common-sense economic reform. Ordinary people bear a disproportionate tax burden in terms of the well-being cost of taxation. Taxation endangers ordinary people's access to the things that they need. That is to say that taxation takes a greater toll on their well-being than it does on the well-being of the wealthy. For the wealthy, taxation policy is the difference between being able to buy a 7th batch and having to go without. For the wealthy, taxation is the difference between being able to buy a 10th classic car and having to go without. For ordinary people, taxation is the difference between being able to buy a decent meal and having to go without. For ordinary people, taxation is the difference between being able to afford a warm, healthy home and having to live in a cold, wet flat. Ordinary people face a disproportionate tax burden when it comes to the well-being cost of taxation. When we tax the wealthy, we don't get in the way of their capacity to access healthcare, food, housing, and electricity. When we tax ordinary people, we do. So we must redistribute the tax burden so that ordinary people do not pay a disproportionate cost in terms of the well-being burden of taxation. We need a capital gains tax and a tax-free threshold. The capital gains tax can pay for the tax-free threshold. We can increase taxes on the wealthy to provide tax cuts to those who need them the most. Some people suggest that these policies are radical. Australia has a capital gains tax and a tax-free threshold. Australia is not a radical state. Some people suggest that these policies will encourage people to leave the country. People are currently leaving New Zealand and they are going to Australia, a country that has these policies. We need tax reform. We need a capital gains tax and a tax-free threshold. We need tax cuts for the many, paid for by the wealthy few.